some physically challenged persons are concerned they may be disenfranchised. Their worry is that some polling stations are not accessible. The visually impaired are also asking for tactile ballot jackets to help them cast their votes. Another report by Shirley Barwuah.
Voting is a fundamental right and every vote counts. The right to vote is a unique and singularly important indicator of citizenship and a hallmark of democracy. For too long, the concerns of people with disabilities with regards to voting and access to the polling stations have not received the needed attention, and therefore some have been unable to exercise this basic civil right. This vulnerable group includes visually, hearing, and speech-impaired persons with albinism and burn survivors. There are several reasons for voter disenfranchisement: physical inaccessibility, failure to provide registration and voting materials in accessible formats, lack of private and independent voting for many citizens, and a denial of the right to vote on the basis of erroneous assumptions about a person's capability because of his or her disability.
Gone are those days people didn't even understand what disability is and what persons with albinism pass through in terms of voting.
We have some other people with some form of disability, we call them little people. They are normally too short.
Eric Kusi lost his sight at the age of 7. The 32-year-old partially blind sport enthusiast spoke to GBC24 about his voting experience with and without tactile ballot jackets.
With the first voting that I had in 2004, that one I voted with the help of a senior colleague who happened to be my senior brother. I've used the tactile ballot before. I used it in 2012. To me, it was the best, let me put it that way, because looking at both experiences, I went there to the screen, I had my ballot paper with a jacket, and I had to do everything on my own.
The executive director of the Ghana Blind Union, Dr. Peter Obinya-Samoa, lost his sight at the age of 18 and has voted in almost all the major elections.
I was a tactile ballot, yes. It's a very different experience. I know where my candidate is. I know which number is positioned on the ballot paper. And so, of course, I go to the place with a friend or a guide or my wife.
The Ghana Federation of Disability Organization noted that those who were able to cast their ballots in previous elections had to do so with the assistance of other individuals, which defeats the purpose of secret balloting. In past elections, some persons with disability had challenges in accessing voting centers because some polling centers were poorly sited.
If you have a polling station across an open gutter, you don't expect someone in clutches or in a wheelchair to be able to access that center easily.
With blind persons, normally, since we go there with guides, we're able to manage through the terrain. But then some of our colleagues, especially those who use wheelchairs and calipers and things, some of the polling stations at the last election were very unfriendly.
The Director of Communications at the Electoral Commission, Mr. Eric Kofi-Jakpasu, says election officials, personnel and volunteers have received training to offer vulnerable groups preferential treatment. He says all the necessary steps have been taken to ensure physical accessibility of voting procedures and centers of all persons with disability.
As part of the electoral reforms, it is captured clearly that the people with disabilities and the vulnerable should be given preferential treatment. That is why we have rolled out all these processes to enable them. The vulnerable will not have to join any queue. The disabled will not have to join any queue. They just come and they flow and they will have to vote out of turns. Okay. For the blind, those who can use it, they will use the tactile ballot. We are using it all over. They are being trained, and we've produced a lot of tactile ballots, and it will be at all the polling stations. Those who, for one reason or the other, may not be comfortable with the use of the tactile ballot are allowed to vote with assistance.
Ghana has developed a guideline document to advocate inclusion and participation of persons with disability in the elections.
This year's elections will be better than the previous. That has been our vision. So we also expecting that the disabled and the vulnerable will get better services in this year's elections.
The EC has also engaged persons living with disabilities in some tutelage to ensure that they enjoy these fundamental rights and go through the electoral process without a hitch. The Federation encouraged its members to be confident and participate. This time round, persons living with disability are optimistic that physical access and compliance standards would be adhered to increase the numbers at the polling centers and improve the experience of voters with disabilities. For GBC 24, Shirley Barwuah reporting.